Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our ALS Webinar Wednesday series. My name is Malia Forbes, a marketing coordinator for ALS North America. I'll be facilitating the webinar today. Before we begin the presentation, I have a few helpful notes. If you are having technical issues with our webinar platform, you can type a message in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, and I will see if I can assist you. Our presenters today include Scott Griggs, our ALS project manager for COVID testing in USA, who will give a brief introduction to our topic, followed by Chris Amidon and Sally Binder. Chris Amidon is the National IH Sales Manager for ALS and has been with us since 2014. Prior to ALS, he was in environmental consulting for 22 years, beginning with US EPA Superfund site investigation and remediation, and later moving into the industrial hygiene field. Chris is the technical resource for clients regarding hygiene sampling, analysis, and media needs. Chris graduated from Nazareth College of Rochester, New York, with a Bachelor of Science in Environmental Science, a Bachelor of Science in Economics, and a minor in Chemistry. In addition, he also has an MBA from Thomas More College. Sally Binder is the Director of Operations for the ALS Marshfield Group of 5 food testing laboratories in the United States. She has been with ALS since the Marshfield Group was acquired by ALS in June 2017. Sally has almost 20 years of experience in food testing and supports a diverse group of clients, industries, and testing methodologies, including general microbiology, rapid molecular pathogen detection, wet chemistry, and analytical chemistry. Sally holds a Bachelor of Science in Pharmacology and Toxicology from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Today, Chris and Sally will be discussing COVID-19 surface sampling and detection. Team, thank you for taking the time to deliver this presentation. I'm now going to turn it over to you, Scott.
Thank you very much for that nice introduction, and thank you everyone for making time today to attend this webinar. And we apologize that it didn't work as planned last week, but I think you'll find this still a very exciting subject for us today. So, you know, as we come back to work across the nation now, the need for more testing is obvious in our news and in our factories across the country. ALS is established, has been around for over 40 years in the testing business. We serve over 50 countries, over 300 locations. We have a staff of scientists and technologists worldwide of 13,000 people, and over 20 million samples come through our labs on a daily basis. And so I want to introduce exactly how we got into COVID, as we see it really an extension of what we've traditionally done in food manufacturing areas, but also in food services area, and now coming really into the industrial hygiene area. So we have a global network of food laboratories, and many of them today around the world are doing this COVID surface testing. So what we're doing here in the United States is no exception. We have many people that attended last week and probably today from Canada. We're doing this testing in Canada, in Mexico, in Colombia, Peru, and Brazil. We also are doing quite a bit of work in the Iberian Peninsula of Europe with Portugal and Spain and Italy and the UK offering these services as well. So as you think about your facilities in the Americas and in Europe, we're there to really extend this kind of a service. It's something that, again, we've done similar service for food manufacturers for a number of years. We also have a very good network of environmental laboratories and industrial hygiene locations across the United States and Americas. And so many of you have worked with us for industrial hygiene type tests and environmental along the line. And so we're fully committed to a full range of services for COVID. But today we're talking really about surface sampling. And so, some thoughts about our laboratories and capabilities that we have. We do run a hub and spoke model of laboratories, which allows us to specialize, but also be able to bring services that are necessary close to your locations. We have a diverse range of services that we provide. And so, what we are doing here with this virus called COVID is not unlike what we do with other pathogens and bacteria as we look at surfaces to GMP practices for industrial hygiene. We're routinely collecting swabs and sponges for them. And so the extension of this work for viruses was a real natural for us in our laboratory network. And so, again, you'll find that we're leaders really in the area of food testing, and we have a wide range of services that we can bring to help you. We do in the food area when we need to look at surfaces for Salmonella, Listeria, or E. coli. That's something that we do routinely, as I said, with dispatching swabs and sponges across the nation, and getting very rapid turnaround times to let food manufacturers and food service know how well their sanitation program is working. And so we have a wide range of services that can support that. Even as we think about what makes ALS different from other just plain test labs, it is ALS Solutions. We're doing auditing programs for some of the largest franchise restaurants in the world. And so we have a tool that allows you to build your audit plan and then dispatch it into various, as I said, food service locations, restaurants, to assure that the audits are being done correctly. And that also then triggers the need to do a routine surface inspection from the audit. As we think about some of our other capabilities that we have some very advanced graphic capabilities that if you can give us an architectural plan for your facility and you have a daily or weekly or monthly sampling program in place, we can begin to report this in a very graphical visuals type of program. So as we think about what we can do beyond these initial COVID testing, we can set up programs for you where you can order your consumables, your swabs and sponges to support your daily, weekly, and monthly schedules. We can automate those schedules to make sure they're occurring on a timely basis. We can give you additional training or consulting that is necessary. And again, this is all something that is set up. We have thousands of customers using this program here. It's very well established. It works in whatever language that we would see in the Americas. So we can rapidly deploy, obviously, in English, but French and Spanish as well in that area. So this is a key part of what we have in ALS Solutions. And then the visuals. So with that, I'll turn it over next to Chris, who will talk to you about the sampling. So Chris.
Thanks, Scott. So when it comes to sampling, we look for some guidance, and there's as far as areas to sample, and the published document that we found is the surface sampling for coronavirus, the COVID-19. It's a practical how-to protocol for healthcare and public health professionals. And that was released by the World Health Organization on February 18th, 2020. The document was geared towards the main settings were healthcare, and then also closed settings outside of healthcare, such as hotel rooms, cruise ships. Really, these sampling areas, recommendations can be applied to any sort of setting. But again, this document was geared more towards the healthcare and then other miscellaneous businesses. So what you want to look for are high touch surfaces. that's the main area where the virus could be on somebody's hand and they're touching frequently. And the essential sampling sites are areas such as doorknobs, light switches, a side table, a keyboard, a faucet handle, sinks, toilets, ventilation units or air purifiers. The ventilation units, air purifiers, if it's a single room type unit, it could have the virus on, the filtration or any part of that. So that's an area you want to look at. And then other sampling sites they recommend are things such as bedding, telephones, curtains, garbage cans, walls, desktop, filing cabinets. So really, when you go into an area, you want to look for these high touch areas, and then also any horizontal surfaces where if somebody were to sneeze or cough, where that particulate might land. Because if the virus is in that, then those are the areas where the virus is going to be at in a facility. So once you decide you're going to do sampling, you get all the sampling stuff from us. The first thing you need to do is make sure you got the right PPE on, and that's going to include at a minimum gloves, and then possibly Tyvek suit or some sort of coverall, a mask, a respirator, safety glasses, a face shield, anything that's required for the job or where you're at. And this is going to be sort of job or site specific, because as you're going in, you're going to know what the conditions are in those areas. So you're going to have a better idea of what PPE is going to be needed. The next thing you should do is lay out the sampling area. The recommended area is 25 square centimeters, which is roughly 2 inches by 2 inches. So you want to get that all set up so that when you're ready to sample, you can just, collect the sample from all your sample areas. And then the first thing to do, on the left-hand side here, we see a couple photos. The first one is a picture of, the swab, each come individually wrapped. Tear the top off, take the swab out. The next, shows the vial of the solution, and the transport vial has a solution in it. Moisten the swab. You want to make sure the swab stays moistened as you're collecting your samples. And then the swab should be held between the thumb and forefinger so that you can rotate it as you're collecting the sample. And the recommendation is to use the swab against surfaces and go 10 times horizontally, 10 times vertically, keeping constant pressure on the surface and then also rotating it. That's making sure that you're getting all the different areas and angles on that surface. Once you get your sample collected, hold the swabs are longer than the tubes, so you're going to have to put it next to the tube and get an idea. Cut the top of the swab off, the excess, and then put it in the sample tube. Once it's in that sample tube, seal the top tightly, and the sample tube becomes your primary package. There'll be pre-printed labels in the sample packet, the sample kit. Put the pre-printed labels on the vials and, on the chain of custody. Place the tube in the biohazard bag and seal it tightly. On the left, we have some vials, a picture of some vials and the swabs, and then also the biohazard bag that's going to be with the kit. Once it's in the biohazard bag and sealed, this is considered your secondary package. Each time you go from one package to the next, the outside of that package should be disinfected with alcohol swabs or some sort of disinfectant. That's to ensure that as you're touching with your gloves, if there's a virus, if the virus was on your hands, you're actually cleaning off the package. Once the samples are in the biohazard bags, they're placed into bubble wrap bags, which are part of the package. And depending on the size of the kit that's sent to you, multiple samples go in the bubble wrap bag. The largest bubble wrap bag that we have would be 10. So once you get it in the bubble wrap bag, you remove the seal strip, press it closed again, and again, disinfect the outside of the bubble wrap bag. This is pretty important, again, to make sure you're not spreading from one package to the next. On the number of samples in your kit, they will all have the UN 3373 marking on it so that it, FedEx knows. And then inside there is a styrofoam cooler, and it'll come with ice packs that need to be frozen. The bubble wrap with these samples should be kept in between the the ice packs, and then you fill out your chain of custody form, take a picture of the chain of custody form, and then put the chain of custody in the top of the box in a Ziploc bag, and then seal the box. Put several layers of tape. Then you have the visit the bit.ly/ALS pickup. That's a system to go in and notify us when your samples are ready, where they need to be picked up. And then you can also upload a copy of your chain of custody form so that then we can get that on to the lab so they know the samples are coming and get things pre-logged. As far as storing the sample kits, once you get it, it should be kept in the refrigerator. These need to be kept cold, and then the ice packs will be put in the freezer for refreezing. After sampling, they should be on ice with the freezer packs sandwiched in the box, as I mentioned. And then right now, as far as where the analysis is being performed in the U.S., right now it's the ALS Marshfield Lab at 510 North Joseph Avenue, Marshfield, Wisconsin. We're also doing it in Canada in the Winnipeg Lab at the Unit 12, 1329 Naqua Road East in Winnipeg. And then as of June, we'll be up and running at the ALS Lab on Gun Road in Houston as well. So all the FedEx return label, all the materials that you need to collect the samples, as far as the swabs, the tubes, and then the box to ship it back in, that's all part of the sampling kit. So that'll all come to you once it's ordered. And with that, I will turn it over to Sally to talk about the analysis side.
Thank you, Chris. So with that said, we have the samples will be sent to the laboratory. So it's important that the sample integrity is verified upon receipt of the samples by the laboratory. And as Chris mentioned, that's why it's so important to maintain those conditions outlined when samples are being transported. So the analysis itself is a molecular test for the detection of nucleic acid from the SARS-CoV-2 by real-time reverse transcription PCR in the environmental surface swabs. And it's worthwhile to note that this molecular testing process and use complies with the requirements of the testing panel developed and published by the CDC for clinical COVID testing. The summary of the process is: first, viral RNA is isolated through extraction and purified through a series of lysis, binding, and wash steps. Next, that purified viral RNA is ready for reverse transcription for cDNA synthesis, amplification, and detection by PCR. The laboratory is utilizing all commercially available testing supplies and kits, and this includes viral RNA extraction kits, CDC directed for use probe and primer sets. There's 3 sets involved. 2 of the sets detect regions of the nucleic capsid N gene specific to SARS-CoV-2. So those are known as N1 and N2. And 1 set detects RNase P, or RP, and that's utilized as an external PCR control as far as environmental swab testing goes. The commercially available real-time PCR kit is used for detection of the SARS-CoV-2 on an open platform PCR instrument. The laboratory is utilizing the laboratory's testing process employs multiple controls to ensure that we have a valid test result. This includes the NTC, or the no template control. This includes nuclease-free water to monitor for contamination during extraction and PCR preparation. There's a positive control to monitor for PCR performance and target detection, and an RP control to further assess extraction and PCR performance. So following our viral RNA extraction, the RNA is converted to complementary DNA and analyzed by PCR. So during the PCR analysis, the probes anneal to specific target sequence located between the forward and reverse primers. During the extension phase, the 5' nuclease activity of Taq polymerase displaces and degrades the probe, causing reporter dye to separate from quencher dye, which generates a fluorescent signal. The PCR instrument software monitors the fluorescent signal intensity as the reaction progresses through each PCR cycle. The run is complete, and the data is analyzed following the assay and instrument software guidelines. and the results are reported as positive or negative, and a positive result indicates the presence of SARS-CoV-2 genetic material. And that is a summary of the testing process.
Thank you, Scott, Chris, and Sally. We will open up the webinar for questions. If you could write your question in the chat section, I will moderate these and pass along the questions to our presenters. While we wait for people to type out their questions, this webinar presentation has been recorded. All participants of this webinar will receive a follow-up email once the recording is available for view. We also post our webinars on our ALS Global website and our ALS YouTube channel. I encourage you to find a wide range of video resources and past Webinar Wednesday presentations available there. Also, please follow our showcase page on LinkedIn as we post announcements and registration links to future webinars and other valuable resources and updates there. Okay, let's see. We do not have any questions at this time. I'll wait just a moment more. Remember, if you do have a question, you can follow up with any of our staff that are listed on this final slide with their email address. Okay, we do have a question. Is viral transport medium recommended by WHO for coronavirus sample transport used in a kit?
Yeah, this is Scott here. So the viral transport solution is recommended by the World Health Organization, and it's a saline-based solution that we're using for that. So yes, it is recommended. It helps preserve the virus in the transport back to the laboratory.
Thank you, Scott. I think we have another question coming through. Okay, so here's a question. What kind of response is expected for RNA-seq, human target, in an environmental sample? I'll make that visible. So if you look down in the chat window, somebody might be able to answer that.
Sally, is that something you can get to, or do we need to get back to this person afterwards?
So generally speaking, that is just, it's not expected to, that is not something that would be detected in an environmental sample. It's more of a process control for the testing. And as things progress, there is the reality that it is not necessary for analysis for environmental samples. Right now, it's an extra control in the process. It is absolutely needed for clinical testing.
Thank you. Another question, how can I get a representative sample from textiles?
That's a very hard one. You know, in the WHO guidelines, it talks about curtains and it talks about bedding. And so with that, you know, we are wetting and trying to get such things as curtains and bedding. So it's exactly the same procedure. But again, obviously understanding a textile is much different than a hard, durable surface. But it's something that the World Health Organization does recommend when there is an infected room to go to the curtain and bedding.
Thank you, Scott. Another question. According to the WHO procedure, is it necessary to increase the positive prediction of finding the COVID on surfaces? And for this, should several swabs be taken?
Yeah, I mean, the recommendation is to, you know, each surface use a single swab. You know, obviously that's, you know, in the field, that's determined based on your sampling protocol. And the number of samples collected in an area is going to be on a case-by-case basis, and how much certainty you want that you've covered the majority of the area you're sampling. Obviously, you can't sample every square inch, but the more samples you collect in a general area, the higher certainty you're going to have that, you know, is the virus there or not.
Okay, thank you. One more question. A little bit different. What if someone forwards a human specimen to the laboratory?
We are not authorized to test clinical samples, so we would not be able to test it. Right now, that's held at least in the U.S., right, to CLIA certified
That's correct.
laboratory.
Yeah, that's correct. I think we would, if we saw in the chain of custody that it came from somebody's mouth or nasal, we would have to reject the sample. We're not accredited to do that work in the U.S.
Plus, the sampling devices we're providing are not designed for human sampling. The swabs are
Yep.
very different.
Yep.
Thanks, team. I think that is all of our questions. I appreciate everyone attending today. Again, look for the email that will show you the video has been posted if you'd like to share this or watch it again. Everyone, enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll see you at the next webinar.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.